Welcome everyone to another of our monthly speaker series meetings. We're into our second year and our programs seem to be wildly popular. They're open to anyone who has an interest. You just have to go to our Woods and Wetlands website and register, and we'll send you the coding to get into the program. Tonight, our speaker series will feature Jay Futterman, but you may find any topic relating to the environment, wildlife, public policy, outdoor activities, canoeing, hiking, anything to make the planet a better place. We ask that you mute your speaker so that we don't hear your dogs barking or your television or background noise. We will be offering you an opportunity to ask questions of Jay. If you would use the chat at the bottom of the screen, it's the little green, no, it just says chat. Type your questions in there, and after Jay speaks, Rosemary will sort them all out and put the questions to Jay. And I think I have hit everything. Next month, we're going to hear about rail safety, and hope you'll tune in on, I think it's August 14th, to hear from our very own Jerry Songer. This summer, we have tried to highlight our own members and all the work that we at Woods and Wetlands are doing, and we're kind of focusing on that. Jay will be the first. And I would like to introduce him. He is a member of our conservation committee and also a leader of our clean energy team. He's an ophthalmologist by day and a climate fighter and warrior by night and on the weekends. He is passionate about solar and electric vehicles. He is an owner, an advocate, and an educator. He's a solar ambassador with the Illinois Solar Energy Education Association and has organized many electric vehicle shows. I've been to a couple of them, and don't miss them. He helps the city of Highland Park with their sustainability planning as a member of the city's sustainability advisory group. Jay, a self-avowed energy nerd, is a firm believer that we have a role to play in the fight against climate change. We have the tools that we need, and we are in a better place with cheaper actions than what got us into this mess. Please welcome Jay Futterman. We're so happy you're here. Take it away, Jay.
All right, great. Thank you, Linda. It's great to be here, and thank you all for your time. It's good to see my father and sister in the audience as well. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. All right. Let's see if we can get to the right place here. Okay. We were doing so good. I'm going to stop sharing and try that again. It worked so much better in rehearsal. Let's try this again. All of a sudden it disappeared. There we go. Okay, I'm not sure how that just happened to work, but we got it. We're in the right place. And then, if there are questions that Rosemary, that kind of come along in the chat, please interrupt me. I'm going to cover a lot of stuff today, all under the umbrella of fighting climate change from home. So just right off, a quick disclaimer here. I'm not an engineer, financial advisor, building tradesperson, or in any way professionally trained to give home advice. That being said, I think what I have to say is sound, well-reasoned, and comes from my own lived experience. Any references to specific products or companies doesn't necessarily reflect the views of Sierra Club. So having said that, we'll do just a quick quiz here. Who coined the term carbon footprint? What was it? Al Gore, Bill McKibben, Greta Thunberg, or was it British Petroleum? Now, we often talk about carbon footprint, and it's become sort of a part of our environmental discourse, but it's actually coined by BP, right? So the thinking there is BP was trying to deflect blame from them and say, well, we all have blame in this. We all make our carbon footprint, but really, you're not the problem. The problem is the fossil fuel companies. Like tobacco companies, they sell a product that we're addicted to. Government action, markets, large social movements, and most importantly, elections make the biggest impact. Now, that being said, what each of us does matters. The tips I'm going to go through are things each of us could do that can make a difference, and that can add up. They'll reduce our energy use, they'll save you money, you'll feel better as well. And that's important. There's a lot of anxiety that comes along with climate change, and knowing that you're part of the solution, I think, goes a long way. But most importantly, don't let this stop at your front door. Always try and do more. Spread what we're doing here tonight to as many people as you can. That being said, the themes for our talk, back to fighting climate change from home. You all can do this. So the main themes here: use less power, right? Conservation and efficiency. We'll talk about ways of doing that. Electrify everything. We need to get away from fossil fuels every chance we can, get everything running on electricity. Using energy at times of lower demand. All of these things have potential to save money. Plan ahead. Don't buy things in an emergency and lock yourself into another 10, 15, 20 years of fossil fuels. And like I said, take this beyond your home. So where are we in Illinois right now with our energy mix? At least as of 2021, we are a nuclear powered state. About half of our energy comes from nuclear. A little over a quarter came from coal, and that's going down. The Waukegan coal generation plant just closed, and more closures are on the way. The gray segment here is natural gas, and this is increasing to some degree, but the exciting stuff here is the wind and the solar. The solar is a very small piece of the pie, but that actually is underrepresented of what it actually contributes to the grid. And thanks to an act that was passed in Illinois last year, the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, we are on pace to get to 50% of our generation from renewable sources by 2040. And it's just set to go up like a rocket. And so what this means is that the grid is getting cleaner, right? So if we electrify things over time, anything you electrify will become cleaner and cleaner. Whereas if it's powered by fossil fuels, it will stay just as dirty and polluting. So another theme here is using energy off peak. Now, most people out there probably don't think about where their electricity comes from throughout the day. Electricity costs the same, whether you use it during a period of high demand or low demand. But some of us are on an hourly plan where the price of electricity can vary depending on the actual demand. And this is just a screenshot from May 30th. And you can see overnight, the price of electricity actually went down below zero. And as the day went on, people come home from work, it's hot, everyone fires up their air conditioning, and the price of electricity goes way up. And oftentimes in these times of high demand, that's when the grid is firing up its dirtiest peaker plants. These are less efficient, very, very polluting coal or sometimes gas plants. So whatever we could do to avoid these peaks in demand means these plants get fired up less often. It could save you money if you're on the real-time pricing, and it reduces carbon emissions. So using energy off peak is critical. Now, I assume everyone here lives in a house that's already built. And in our area, it's pretty built up already, but new construction is a important area to think about this stuff. So there are, ways of building houses that are net zero or passive houses. And I'm going to send out, everyone's going to get a list of resources for everything that I've gone through today with links, because really I could probably talk for close to an hour about any one of these slides, but we're going to cover a lot of ground, so I'll have that background info for you. There's bills in California and New York to make all new construction 100% electric, not have any gas hookups at all. And in part of the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act that was passed in Illinois, there is something called stretch codes, where municipalities have the option to adopt tighter, more energy efficient codes for new construction. And if we're going to build a house today and you want it to be net zero, what do you think about? Well, you're going to have solar panels on the roof, efficient lighting, really a tight building envelope with extra insulation. Your heating and cooling is going to come from a heat pump. Your hot water is going to come from a heat pump. And we'll talk about heat pumps as we go on here. Doors and windows will be high performance and sealed against heat loss and air leaks. And net zero homes can look kind of new and futuristic like the top one here, or kind of average like the one down here. And this works in cold climates as well. But like I said, most of us live in existing homes. And as such, in Illinois, most houses are hooked up to natural gas, which produces a lot of bad stuff: carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, small micron, 2.5 micron particulate emissions. So a lot of bad stuff. And think about, where in your house do you use fossil fuels? For most people, it's heating. It's the stove, it's their dryer, it's their car. Those are the main sources. Think about how you can reduce your energy use, and we'll go through all sorts of tips for that. And I just want to point out one really good resource for this is called Rewiring America. They have a book you can get online that just has really clear, concise, ordered step-by-step instructions to completely electrify your house and eliminate fossil gas. And I'm going to use the term fossil gas rather than natural gas because it's a fossil fuel. I think natural gas puts this spin on it that is unwarranted. This is part of the problem, so we're going to call it fossil gas. And Rewiring America has excellent information and Q&A. And like I said, the link will be in the sheet that I'm going to give to you. And again, health issues, right? So burning fossil gas in the home, especially if it's not well vented, that releases carbon monoxide, nitrogen dioxide, and that can lead to respiratory diseases and even death. So that's sort of the background of reducing your emissions from home and electrifying everything. So now I'm going to kind of dive into my house in particular here. So we'll start at the roof. And on my roof, I have solar panels on the east side and on the west side. I first put my solar panels on the east side in 2016. And the goal there was to cover all my electrical needs. And I was able to do that. And then a couple years later, I bought an electric car, started buying energy from the grid again. So I installed some panels on the other side of the roof. Solar is the cheapest way to get electricity in Illinois. There's a bunch of great resources. Illinois Solar Education Association is a good one. They're having a solar home tour on Saturday, September 24th throughout the state. If you have solar, if you know anyone who has solar who might be interested in being on the tour, please contact me. Solar, there's all sorts of great financial incentives, both from the federal government and from the state of Illinois, that dramatically lowers the price of solar. It will pay for itself in most houses within 7 years. And the solar panels will last 25 to 30 years. Now, solar is not right for every roof. if you have trees over your roof, if you live in a rental property, if you live in multi-unit housing, then community solar is an option. Community solar essentially means you're buying your electricity from fields of solar panels that are usually somewhere in rural Illinois. And the Citizens Utility Board has great information about that. Participating in a community solar program is guaranteed to save you money. You're buying electricity from those solar fields for less than what you pay for to buy it from ComEd. So solar power, it's a slam dunk as far as I'm concerned, as a way of reducing your carbon footprint, if we want to borrow that term. Right below the roof is the attic, right? And when we first moved into our house, the inspector showed us around and he said, "Oh, good, you got spray foam up in the attic." And I thought that was great. And then about a year ago, I had an energy audit done where a guy came in with a thermal camera and did what's called a blower door test. And he looked around my attic and said, "You know, you got a really lousy spray foam job up there." With the thermal camera, he was able to see all these voids where this right here is an area essentially without any insulation, where hot air is just able to escape right through the roof. And along the whole side of the gable part of the roof, just inadequately done spray foam insulation. So he said the insulation was so bad up there, it was like having a window open at all times. So that's something I learned, right? So an energy audit with a thermal camera was very valuable. So I had someone come in and basically fix the sloppy job that was done. Additional spray foam was installed, and that reduced the attic's leakage to the outside by 75%, and overall the home's air leakage by 20%. So you can see that on the left is the before, and on the right is the after. So bad job, good job. And then the void that I showed before on the right is how it should look. So that essentially is a very tight air resistant cap that's on the roof of the house. It's going to make everything tighter. It's going to make any money I spend on heating, keep that heat in the house. It's going to keep the heat from the sun in the summer out of the house a lot better. So insulation is important, but really even perhaps more important is air sealing. And you know, that comes from the blower door test and from the thermal imaging, which is part of a professional energy audit. As far as the spray foam goes, there's a lot of different products out there, and you want to make sure you go with one that has a blowing agent that has low global warming potential. There's resources on that in the information sheet that I provided. All right, so moving down from the attic into the bedroom. So real common stuff here, and hopefully most of you are already doing this, is just changing out your light bulbs. You know, the old incandescent light bulbs, typically, you know, 60, 75 watt bulb. You replace that with an LED bulb, which is 5 watts, 7 watts. Imagine how many bulbs that are in the house and how much energy you save by doing that. Plus these bulbs last for usually at least 10 years. ComEd has a home energy efficiency program. It's free. You just give them a call. They'll come to your house. They'll change all your bulbs to LED bulbs for free, right? That's a no-brainer. If you have incandescent bulbs, get them all changed out. Other things in the bedroom, ceiling fan, right? So if it's not terribly hot, you can run the fan. Fans cool people. They don't cool the air, but they can certainly cool off a room when you're in there. And it's a lot cheaper to run a fan than the air conditioner. In your closet, you got a sweater, I'm sure. You know, it's okay to be a little cold in the winter and a little warm in the summer. You could be at one with the elements to some degree. And then windows are another important thing to consider. Here's a thermal camera view of one of our bedroom windows that just shows that it's not a very tight window. But if you do the math, and 1/8 inch gap along the bottom or side of a window is equivalent to having a 2.5 inch diameter hole in the wall. So we wouldn't really want to have that in our house. So we really don't want to have gaps in the windows. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to replace every window in the house. There's, you know, those films that you could do over a drafty window in the winter time. But windows are expensive. They're not what I would consider the low-hanging fruit for efficiency in the house. All right. So the bathroom, right? We have hot water that we use in the bathroom, and hot water requires energy to produce. So there are shower heads and sinks that aerate the water, essentially making the same amount of flow with less water. ComEd will change out your shower head and your sinks with these aerators that will enable you to use a lot less hot water. All right, now moving downstairs into the hall. So when I had my energy audit, they set this contraption up. This is what a blower door looks like. Essentially, they close all the windows in the house and they attach this thing to your door and they create a negative pressure by blowing air. And then they see where the house is leaky. So this was able to pinpoint a whole bunch of spots in my house that needed some air sealing. One of them in particular was the door to our garage. You can see with the thermal camera here how leaky it is. So a simple solution is just to put a door sweep in. That eliminates a lot of the drafts, and you can get that for 10 bucks. It'll keep the whole area a lot warmer and less drafty as well. All right, well, through that door is my garage, which usually looks about this messy. Parked here is my car. It's a Chevy Bolt. It's all electric. You can see it plugging in here. This is how I charge my car. I don't have to go to the gas station. I generally don't worry about finding a place to charge. The car this time of year can go for about 250 miles between charges. I have a whole series of lectures I've done on electric cars. The links to those will be provided as well. If you have questions as we go on, I'm happy to discuss them. Illinois just recently came out with a rebate for electric vehicles for up to $4,000. So that's part of the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act. Got a link for that. But really important with electric cars is planning ahead. With the supply crunch going on right now, and with electric cars in particular, most car manufacturers are selling out for months and months. So if you think you may need to get a new car, the time to start shopping is now. Linda, I think just told me before we started, if you want a Tesla and you want go into the dealership and you buy one now or buy one online, you won't get it until December. So plan ahead, but electric vehicles are way more fun to drive than gas cars, and they run on electricity. So look into that as your next option, because the transportation sector in the United States is actually the #1 contributor to greenhouse gases. But you don't have to drive everywhere, especially on beautiful days like this. You can take your bike, and this is my son's bike, but my bike has a little luggage rack on the back, and you can get these things called panniers, which are essentially like saddlebags that strap right on to that cargo rack on the back. So you could fill your panniers with groceries. You could do a lot of errands and do it all on the back of a bike. That's 0 emissions. And then down here, I've got my new electric mower. I've got my old electric mower over here. But lawn care machinery, those are super dirty emitters. They don't have any emissions control. Oftentimes they're burning oil as well as gas. So you can electrify these things. They don't cost much more. They work better. They're quieter. They're going to give you better air quality. So you're not breathing in all this soot and smoke while you're using them. And then out in the yard, we have a great native plant pollinator garden. And, it's nice to look at. It's great for the birds and the bugs, but it also sequesters carbon a lot better than turf grass. These native plants are very deep rooted. They come back year after year and they deposit carbon in the soil there. Having a nice garden is also end market for compost. And we'll talk about compost in a couple slides, but we need to find places to use compost where we can keep that carbon-rich material in the ground. I talked about my mower. Rather than use leaf blowers, we just rake. It's a lot quieter. It's no emissions. And even the electric leaf blowers, they blow a lot of dust in the air, which is bad for lungs. And the other thing that we do in our yard, which is grow food. Growing food locally reduces a lot of or perhaps all the emissions that are associated with food production. So if you've got the space to do it, it's going to taste better. It's a fun thing to do. All right. So we take that food into our kitchen, right? Kitchen appliances. So on the left here, we have our gas range. And on the right here is a countertop induction burner. So there was a great study done earlier this year looking at gas stoves in new construction and old construction. They release carbon dioxide and nitrous oxide when they're on, and they release a lot of carbon dioxide and methane when they're off. They all leak. These leaks from stoves, even when they're off, have the emissions impact of 500,000 cars per year. Now, that's with fossil gas. The induction burner, and you can get whole stoves that run on induction, work basically with magnetism. You have to have steel or copper cookware, not aluminum or glass, but they heat up nearly instantly. The response to the temperature control is instantaneous, way faster than fossil gas. This isn't like those electric coil stoves that you may know. These are a great fast way of cooking, and you could set your hand on top of that unit and it's not hot. It only generates heat within things that are ferromagnetic. So I try and cook whatever I can on that little burner. Elsewhere in the kitchen, we've got the refrigerator. So the refrigerator is always on, right? So you want to look for one that's Energy Star. And within the refrigerator, they all have a refrigerant. And if you look on the inside, there'll typically be a tag, and this is mine. It uses the R134A, which is not a very good one. And this was a refrigerator that was from 2018. That R134A has a high global warming potential. The newer ones are what we call HFC free, which is a hydrofluorocarbon free. That's hydrofluorocarbons are especially bad greenhouse gases. So they use isobutane or something called R600A. So if you're looking for a new fridge, make sure you look for one of those refrigerants there. Dishwashers also in the kitchen. So we talked about, adjusting the timing for when you use electricity. Well, most dishwashers will have a delay start option. So we wash our dishes overnight when electricity is cheap and plentiful. And ours has the option of doing a no heat dry, heating the dishes in there. It may dry them off a little bit faster, but it uses a lot more electricity that way. We just open the door and leave it open for a little while, and that dries just as easily, or use a dish towel. What about food, right? So food is a big impact on climate change. A lot of emissions come in the growing and transportation of food. So to whatever degree you can eat local, that makes sense. So we get a lot of our produce from a community supported agriculture farm based in Grays Lake. And there's all sorts of these CSAs that you can find locally, where you get a fresh box of locally grown produce. I wouldn't eat kohlrabi if it wasn't for our CSA. Or nearly as many turnips and radishes, but it makes you healthier for it. There is also something called Eden Market and Eden Restoration Project. They're affiliated with Sierra Club, and Eden Restoration Project is very active installing free gardens for people to grow food throughout our area. And they're always looking for volunteers who want to work on their gardens. And then they have a farmer's market essentially online where you can get food locally that's raised the right way. Also important, eating less beef. Cows, not only they take up a ton of water and a lot of fertilizer to grow all the corn and a lot of space to grow all the corn, but they produce a lot of methane through both ends of them. So reducing the amount of beef and red meat that you eat goes a long way towards reducing your climate impact. And don't waste food, right? So there's a lot of energy and inputs that go into getting that food on your table, and it's really a disservice to throw that food away. Whatever you don't eat, you can put in the compost bucket. And in our city, we have curbside composting. So we put all of our table scraps into this bucket. When it gets full, we dump it in a trash cart outside, and once a week, the city garbage service comes through and they take that away with our yard waste, and it's just part of our regular collection. So I know a lot of other towns in the area are doing curbside composting. So can encourage your city to do the same. Or if that's not an option, you can compost in your backyard. It creates great soil amendments. And the other thing is, if you put food matter into the garbage, it breaks down into methane. And methane gas is a much more potent greenhouse gas than actually carbon dioxide is. And when you compost it, some will break down into carbon dioxide, but a lot of it will stay as carbon, and that can get sequestered in soils and improve soil health. So composting, very important. All right. So we will go into the living room next. All right. In the living room, you can get a thermostat that's a smart and programmable thermostat. And ComEd will offer these at a discount. And it kind of works with you to raise and lower the temperature for times that you're in the house or times when demand is higher or lower, and that will save you money. This window in our house faces west, and something as simple as just closing the curtains in the afternoon, it really reduces the amount of heat that comes in the house. And then can lights, that's another thing that I realized with the energy audit. So with the thermal camera, you can see the can lights here, how they light up in purple. That's just cold spots, essentially. This is there's no attic space above this ceiling here. And you can retrofit these can lights with LEDs that seal right up against the ceiling and block that whole draft. And these are very inexpensive to get. So if you have any can lights, you may have dollar bills just leaking right through them. So you can retrofit them with these. That's a real easy option. All right, well, heading downstairs into the laundry room now. No one in my house really likes to do laundry. But a couple tips here. Wash in cold water, right? 75% of the energy used by the washing machine is actually used to heat water. We wash in cold water for almost everything, and I think our clothes come out pretty good. A lot of washers have an option for a delay start. So again, shifting your energy use to times of lower demand. We use a detergent from a Chicago company called Meliora. There's a lot of plastic that's involved with laundry detergent. This comes in a cardboard container with a steel top. It's got 64 loads of laundry in this little canister. We're always on the lookout for ways of using less plastic, and we've been very happy with this product. So you get your clothes washed. Also doing a high spin speed is another way of saving energy, because that means there's less water in the clothes that the dryer has to dry. So our dryer is gas powered, and there's heat pump dryers, there's electric dryers, and then there's also sun powered dryers. So we have a clothesline outside. We use this for our towels and bedding and that sort of thing. And it makes the clothes and the bedding smell really good. And we don't have to use any energy to dry them. All right. Also in the basement, let's close that. Oops. Is the heating and air conditioning, right? So heat pumps, this is sort of the big topic now that everybody is talking about. So most people in our area have fossil gas powered furnaces of various efficiency. And they can be 80% efficient, 90% efficient, which means every sort of unit of gas you're using can create 0.8 units of heating. Well, heat pumps work a little bit different. They don't actually create the heat, they move the heat from one place to another. So they can actually be 300 to 400% efficient. So 1 kilowatt hour of electricity can actually bring in 3 kilowatt hours of heat into your house. And essentially, they work like an air conditioner in reverse. An air conditioner takes hot air from your house and pumps it outside. Heat pumps take hot air from outside, even when it's quite cold out, and push it into your house. The models that are out there now work down to 5 degrees. There's even some cold weather models that work down to minus 15 degrees. Maine, state of Maine has a huge push going on right now to get everyone on heat pumps, and that's a cold weather state, and they work phenomenally well there. The problem is most contractors here don't really promote them or really understand them or have much knowledge about them. In other areas of the country, they're quite common. But think about how old your current furnace is, because when that furnace goes, people are generally going to buy an emergency, and your next purchase is going to lock in your emissions for the next 15 years or so. So it's really critical to plan ahead. If you've had that furnace down in the basement for 20 years, start shopping around for a contractor that knows a thing or two about heat pumps. So you don't have to buy in an emergency with whatever that your contractor has on hand. Other things to consider is something as simple as making sure you change your furnace filter regularly, not only for air quality, but if that blower motor is having to force air through a filthy filter, it's having to work a whole lot harder and a lot less efficiently. ComEd also has kind of a neat program called the Air Conditioner Cycling Program, where during the summer months, you can give permission to ComEd to turn your air conditioner off for up to 15 minutes an hour or even longer, and they'll give you a bill credit for that. They have a guy come by, puts a little thing on the outside of your house, connects it to your air conditioner, and you could save, I think, between $5 and $20 per month by participating in that program. And the thinking there is they're trying to eliminate those times of peak demand where they have to fire up those dirtier and more expensive power plants. So getting efficient really is a big part of this. Also in the basement, we've got the water heater, right? So a real simple thing that everybody could do. You see here along the pipes flowing out, I've installed some pipe insulation. You can get this stuff for just a few bucks from the hardware store. Those pipes are filled with hot water normally, and that hot water generally gets colder and colder and essentially is sucking heat. It's a heat loss for the unit, which requires it to turn on more frequently. So insulating those pipes will reduce the heat loss. Now, we had a gas-powered water heater for many, many years, and it has a little flue on the top that would, exhaust the gas to the outside. Now, our furnace is right next to it, and the furnace had a big air intake duct in the basement, and when the furnace would go on, it would actually be sucking basement air into the furnace to such a degree that there was a concern that when the gas-powered hot water heater was on, instead of exhausting the gas out, it would be pulling carbon monoxide into the furnace and circulating it through the house. So my energy auditor caught that, and he said, hey, this is a real hazard. That plus my water heater was about 13 years old, and they don't last much longer than that. So I said, I'm going to get a heat pump. And heat pump water heaters work in a similar way. They pull warm or hot, they pull heat from the air in the basement and put it into the water, and then they exhaust cool air. So if we all went on heat pump water heaters, 100 million tons of carbon emissions would be saved every year. So again, this is something that requires your plumber to have some experience and knowledge about it. Most plumbers, they're just going to install whatever they have on hand. They're going to replace like with like, and that's going to lock you into another 15 years of fossil gas. So plan ahead. If you know your water heater is more than 10 years old, start shopping for a new heat pump water heater. They do cost a little bit more up front, but they're going to save you emissions, and they're going to save you money in the long run. There's also credits available from the utility rebates that'll reduce the upfront costs for these. All right, so that's the tour of the basement, and then that brings us into the den, where I sit on the computer way longer than I'd like to. And one of the things that I do on the computer is take care of finances. And there's a report that's come out over the last couple of years called Banking on Climate Chaos. It's from the Rainforest Action Network, and it's kind of supported by Sierra Club. And the conclusion of this report is really that the whole fossil fuel industry is being supported by banks to the tune of trillions of dollars since the Paris Accord. And the top 4 banks that support fossil fuel extraction and distribution are Chase, Citi, Bank of America, and Wells Fargo. Chances are some of you may do your banking at one of these banks. So what I would encourage you to do is to look into this Banking on Climate Chaos report. The link is in the doc I'll send out to you, and consider moving your money to somewhere else. Local credit union is a good option. I've listed here several other options. Green Penny is a bank based in Iowa. They do online banking, and they exclusively focus on loans for solar financing. Clean Energy Credit Union is an online bank based out of Colorado. And similarly, they focus on loans for solar, electric vehicles, and other home energy efficiency programs. Atmos is an online bank, and they tend to lend to larger solar and wind projects. So, having money sitting in your account at Bank of America, chances are you're not earning much in the way of interest, but you are contributing to fossil fuels. So consider changing your bank. Consider, when you do so, sending a letter to customer relations at the bank and telling them why you're moving your money, because you can use your money to support good stuff instead. Bitcoin has had its ups and downs lately. Bitcoin is extremely dirty. The annual emissions of Bitcoin is equal to that of the country of Sweden. So there's a tremendous amount of computer power that goes into mining Bitcoins. And in the end, it in my opinion, doesn't produce anything of much value to society. Others may argue with that, but it certainly does produce a ton of emissions. So I'd encourage you to avoid Bitcoin. Credo Mobile is a phone company that donates a portion of all their proceeds to environmental and social justice causes. That's who I've had as my carrier for the last, 10, 15 years. So you can do some good with your phone. And then, there's investment options out there as well. I often think, well, I've got money that I'd like to invest and I want to do something good with it. And one place I use is called Steward. They make loans to regenerative agriculture projects, small farms and that sort of thing. And there's another called Raise Green that I found, and they have a variety of things that you can invest in that are geared towards clean energy. And links to all these will be in the supplied documents. And then Also on the computer, I've talked about this earlier. Please do become politically involved. Elections are crucial. Sierra Club, we do phone banking, we do letter campaigns. I know at the last election, I sent hundreds of letters to voters in swing states. That's a simple thing you could do. We have political action committees within Sierra Club. I want to just bring your attention to Illinois has a House Bill 5522, which would essentially be banning assault rifles and similar weapons. Every Town for Gun Safety and Moms Demand Action are two other gun violence organizations I'd encourage you to support. I encourage you to also join our team. We have our clean energy team. Our next meeting is July 25th. It's at 7 p.m. It's on Zoom. We focus on things like CEJA implementation, how to grow solar and build the solar home tour, and how to work with your city government and school district, and any other ideas that you may want to bring forth. We're happy to work on them. So that concludes my presentation. Like I said, I'll make sure everyone gets an email with links to everything I was talking about. And with that, I'll stop sharing my screen and be happy to chat with y'all about any questions that you have.
Thank you so much, Jay. That was very enlightening. And we do have a few comments and questions. I'm going to turn this right over to our head questioner, Rosemary.
That's my new title, so I appreciate it. Thank you, Linda. So starting backwards, Mark wanted to know about a tankless water heater. Do you know about those, and do they help reduce one's carbon footprint?
Sure. Yeah, tankless water heaters, there's two main kinds. One runs on fossil gas and the other runs on electricity. The electricity ones are quite inefficient. They require a lot of electricity. If you're just doing it for sort of a point source, it may make some sense, but for whole home, the electric ones aren't really efficient. The tankless gas water heaters are more efficient than having a tank gas water heater, but you're still relying on fossil fuels for that. So I would encourage you to look at the heat pump water heaters as another option.
Well, and along that line, Tom and is asking for me as well. Could you explain a little more in detail, how does a heat pump work? I've never really understood how hot air could make cold air. Anyway.
Sure. So I won't get into too much detail because I don't really know exactly, but it essentially works like your refrigerator or your air conditioner, but it just has a reverse gear on it. So it has a so essentially what I have out there is a way of taking heat from outside, even when it's cold outside, even when it's 32 degrees out, there is still some heat in that air, and it's able to capture that air, capture that heat, and use that heat to compress a refrigerant using a compressor, and that circles through the pipes, and then it expands, and that expansion then releases that heat inside of the house. So it doesn't actually use the electricity to produce any heat. It's just moving heat from one place to another. So it can get efficiencies of 300%, 400%. You know, it's been around for a long time. The ones that actually work in cold weather are relatively recent, but heat pumps, if you look like, you know, in the warmer climates in the United States, are actually quite common. And I've got a bunch of links in that info sheet that kind of has some nice graphics and explain how heat pumps work a little bit better.
Okay, thank you. And over to the food topic, we've got a couple. Linda mentioned that there is such a thing as a Meatless Monday campaign. So I don't know anything about it, except it sounds like wartime, doesn't it? World War II, when they'd have certain days when you wouldn't eat meat. But have you heard of this campaign?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And, and I don't mean to suggest that people have to cut out red meat entirely. I mean, we grilled steaks last night and they were delicious. But it's pretty rare where I'll have a hunk of meat as my dinner. I think there's different proteins that we can all choose. But you could still eat meat, just, maybe eat less of it, and certainly don't waste it. But Meatless Monday is a good sort of entry point for people who are looking to maybe dip their toes in the water, just to be a little conscious of what they're eating one day per week.
There you go. And then Sharon has a question about food disposals. Is using a garbage disposer any better than putting food in the garbage, assuming, if you're not composting, of those two
Yeah.
places?
Yeah. I mean, there's a limit to how much you want to put down your disposal, but what happens is that goes to the wastewater treatment center, and from there they process that with everything else that comes through, and a lot of that stuff gets converted into a compost of some sort. So I think it's probably better to put some, I guess whatever food you're putting down the disposal is probably better to do that than the garbage, but I wouldn't suggest putting a whole lot down the disposal. I think that's a recipe for plumbing trouble.
Sorry. Tom, I know you mentioned leaf blowers, but Tom was asking if you could go a little more into that. I know there are communities like Wilmette. I don't know if they've affected a ban, but there are people trying to ban electric leaf blowers in some communities. So can you go a little more into some of the problems with that?
Sure. Yeah, so there's a number of communities that are working together to make a coordinated sort of set of regulations around gas-powered leaf blowers. I know in Highland Park, we have a ban from Memorial Day to Labor Day on gas-powered leaf blowers, which is questionably enforced, I would say. But they're extremely loud. There's the noise pollution aspect of it. Leaf blowers throw up a lot of fine particulate matter into the air. Those P2.5 micron particulates, which are really bad for respiratory health. And those tend to be just two-stroke engines where you're combining gas and oil together, and they burn very, very dirty. So the emissions from them are particularly bad as well. And there's electric options that don't have those problems.
Isn't it true too that often on the undersides of leaves are a lot of molds that people are often allergic to and cause, other than the particulate side, actually have mold that create more allergic problems as well?
Sure. And the other thing is the leaf litter is actually really important for insects. So, all kinds of bugs and spiders overwinter in the leaf litter, and they're a valuable part of our ecosystem and our local habitat. Birds have to eat those bugs. Those bugs need to pollinate the flowers and stuff. So it's better just to rake and leave some of that leaf litter in place.
Okay, I have a little rebuttal here from Green Minds, and she's saying, we installed a heat pump when our gas furnace died. Our contractor installed a certain brand of heat pump, which does not work when temperatures dip below freezing. So we had to install a backup gas furnace, which runs more than we would like. We have not been happy with our heat pump, and we're hoping that the company will come up with a retrofit for it that would allow it to function at temperatures lower than freezing. So you had mentioned 32 degrees, but now if it goes below 32, what is that a common problem in heat pumps?
Sure. Yeah, excellent. So, there's all kinds of heat pumps out there, different manufacturers, and some heat pumps are going to be more efficient at lower temperatures than others. We still have a furnace, a gas furnace, and right now I think we have it set to kick in if the temperature gets below 20 degrees outside, because the colder and colder it gets, the harder and harder the heat pump is going to have to work to suck that heat out of the ambient air outside. And the other thing that goes hand in hand with this is making sure that you have a house that's got a tight envelope and is well insulated. So if you're finding that the heat pump is not able to keep up with the heating demands, think about how you can tighten up the house. And like I said, as the temperature does get colder and colder, it does require more energy, and at a certain point it may be just ultimately cleaner and better to use the backup heat from the furnace. And it sounds like that particular model of heat pump is maybe not one that's designed for Midwestern winters. So.
Well, and that brings a question that I've often wondered about. Is it possible to have a house that's too tight, that doesn't have a good enough air exchange?
Yeah.
Or how do you handle that?
Right. So in one of the first slides where I showed sort of the ideal new house construction, they have something in the basement called a heat exchange ventilator. And essentially what this does is it pulls air out of, say, the kitchen and the bathrooms and exhausts that outside and brings in fresh air, which comes into the living spaces. And it has a heat exchanger inside of it, so it's not losing heat. And these houses can track the levels of carbon dioxide in the house using that heat exchanger, and that can run based on the levels of carbon dioxide or other measurements in the house. So as houses do get tighter and tighter, that's something to definitely take into consideration.
Okay. And then Tom wanted to know, after you had your energy audit and you made some of the changes, did you notice a specific savings in your electrical usage? And do you mind sharing, or did you track how much?
It's a great question. It's kind of hard to say because there's been a lot of moving parts. So right after the audit, we changed our hot water heater from gas to electricity. So usage from that went up. I'm sure that we're using less heat since we have a lot more insulation. I know just some of the other things that we did, we replaced a couple windows, and that's made a huge difference. But it's an ongoing process. There's a whole list of things that we're still planning to do to tighten up the envelope in the house.
Very good. Green Minds also wants to know, Jay, can you explain how to sign up for an hourly rate charge from ComEd, please?
Yeah, for sure. So if you go on their website, they'll have a section where you can do that. The hourly rate is really good if you have solar or if you have an electric car. If you don't, then you may not save so much money. They do have other options to kind of participate in what is called demand response, where they will send you a text message when electricity demand is going up. And then if you decrease the amount of electricity you're using, then you get a little bit of a bill credit. But the hourly rate plan, if you have an electric car, you charge it overnight when electricity is a lot cheaper. If you have solar panels, you're generally going to be exporting energy to the grid when electricity is more expensive. So it works really well in that circumstance. If you're otherwise looking at the hourly rate, it's kind of a lot to think of, and it may wind up costing a little bit more.
Okay, and Anne goes along with that. She says, if you use very little energy, you may not save money.
Yeah.
And because they are so frugal with their electricity, they dropped it. And you have to sign up for a year at a time if you get into that program.
Yeah, the other thing that kind of can bite you is there's something called a capacity charge, which basically looks at how much electricity you used in the past year of the 5 highest demand days, and they kind of make you pay for that every month. My capacity charge is 0 because on those 5 highest demand days, I was exporting energy at those times to the grid. So yeah, I think if you don't charge your car or have solar panels, it may not be the best option for you.
Okay, and those are the questions that I found. I know you've been active, it's 8:04, but I do have a question about this. You've been active in your community, and how did you start, or what does Highland Park have in terms of a sustainability commission, a sustainability officer, a community? I know you have Go Green Highland Park. Can you fill us in a little bit? They're a little bit of a model community, I think.
Yeah, so we used to have what's called a Natural Resources Commission, and the Natural Resources Commission would kind of advise the city about its sustainability plan, as well as review building plans for the ravines and along the lake. And that sort of morphed into the Sustainability Advisory Group, where they took away the oversight of building plans and just had the group focus specifically on sustainability. So they've had sustainability plans for many years, and I think they've had this committee or commission active for many years. I started with that, gosh, probably like 4 or 5 years ago. There was just an opening, and I applied for it, and I said, hey, I know a thing or two about solar energy. And they said, great, come on board. So we have a city that's interested in that. The city has been involved with things like the Greenest Region Compact, which is has over 100 Illinois municipalities that have signed on as ways of improving their local environments. So I think we're just fortunate to have a city that values these things.
Thank you. And in the list of resources, Green Minds was interested, where did you get your induction burner? Will you have a list of resources pointing to a good place to buy such a thing?
Yeah. So the New York Times had an article in their wire cutter section that they ranked a bunch of induction burners. I just went and bought the one I have at Best Buy because I just wanted to buy one. Apt sells a bunch of them too. The one I got, I don't know if I'd recommend super highly because it has like 10 temperature settings, and I usually just use setting 1 or 2. If you go up to 3 or 4, it heats things way too fast, way too hot. So I do have the link to that New York Times article.
And why didn't you just buy an electric range?
An induction range.
Well, that or just a plain electric range,
Yeah, well, an electric range, with those coiled burners, that my wife would kill me because the response with that is just not very quick, and that uses a lot of electricity. Actually, an induction burner uses less than an electric range, and our range is fine. I mean, it's gas. The oven is electric, but I think just prioritizing where we want to spend our money, for things that have to cook and sit there for a long time, the induction burner is perfect. If it's just something really quick, we use the gas, or we don't have a full set of induction cookware also. We have a little skillet, and we have that pot that I showed you there. That picture.
You have to get all the accoutrements that match. So.
Yeah.
Oh, I have a couple of my mother's old Revereware pots with the copper bottom. Can that be used on it? They're steel, but with the copper. Can you use that?
If a magnet will stick to the bottom, then it'll work.
Okay. All right. Well, that looks like we're right on time. It's 8:08. We've someone else said cast iron works too.
Iron works too, yeah.
And so we have a lot of congratulations, Jay, a lot of people appreciating your comments tonight. So I'll turn it back to Linda to close, or to Tom, who's closing?
Thank you so much. I'll say goodnight to all and remind you that in August, we will be having Jerry Songer, who is going to discuss what her team is doing with train safety, real potential issues that people may not know about. So it's something that, again, is coming out of our Woods and Wetlands Group. We welcome everyone to join us, to get involved. We're all in this together, and we need to work to make the planet better and our lives better. And thank you for coming. And we hope to see you next month. We have some wonderful programs coming up in the future. Hope to hear from Audubon Society, Lake County Audubon, and also we have lined up a lady whose new book appeared in the Sierra magazine. It's called Water Always Wins. And I think that it's also going to be very exciting and worthwhile for all of us. So thank you again, dear Jay, and thank you all for all your support. And let's keep on moving forward. Good night.